A cold December wind swept through the quiet suburban streets of Boston. From the outside, the Wilsons' white mansion in Newton looked like the perfect symbol of an upper-class household. The meticulously maintained lawn, symmetrically placed black decorative windows, and modest Christmas decorations at the entrance all painted a picture of perfection. However, contrary to its beautiful exterior, invisible strains were deepening daily within the house. "Mom, it's time for your blood pressure medication." Jennifer Wilson began her day by managing her mother's medications as soon as she returned from work. Managing the health of her mother, who suffered from high blood pressure and diabetes, was one of her daily routines. As the eldest daughter, it was her role to quietly handle all aspects of maintaining the family home while working as a senior manager at a major accounting firm. "Oh, yes." Margaret responded indifferently, her eyes glued to her smartphone screen. She was absorbed in Rebecca's Instagram feed. Her mother was captivated by the posts of her younger daughter, who was flamboyantly successful as a luxury real estate agent. "I bought dinner ingredients from Whole Foods today. I made sure to follow Dad's sodium restrictions." "Oh, Jennifer, look at this. Rebecca seems to have closed another wonderful property deal." Margaret interrupted Jennifer's words, her expression overflowing with pride for her younger daughter. "I see." Jennifer quietly headed to the kitchen. Recently, her father David's forgetfulness had been increasing, making meal management increasingly important. She silently began preparing dinner. The doorbell rang. "Excuse me, is this the Wilson residence?" Jennifer put down her knife at the unfamiliar male voice. "Yes, it is. Actually, regarding Ms. Rebecca's debt." Jennifer quickly stepped outside and lowered her voice. "Please, could you keep this from my parents? If you could tell me the amount." This was the third time. Cleaning up after her sister's hidden gambling addiction was always Jennifer's responsibility. She let out a deep internal sigh. Her bank balance would decrease yet again. At night, facing an Excel sheet in her room, Jennifer was keeping the household accounts. Property taxes, her parents' medical expenses, house maintenance costs, and her sister's debts. Deep fatigue showed in her eyes as she stared at the numbers. Her smartphone screen lit up. It was a message from her workplace colleague, Michael Thompson. "Are you working late again?" His kind words warmed her heart a little. "Yes, as usual." As she typed her reply, Jennifer looked out the window. The neighbor's Christmas decorations cast a soft light into the night sky. Christmas Eve morning found the Wilson mansion bustling with activity from early on. Through the large living room windows, the accumulated snow sparkled in the morning sun. Jennifer was putting the finishing touches on decorations she had prepared over the past week. The 8-foot tree adorned with traditional ornaments was perfectly arranged, like a boutique window display in Greenwich Village. Cherished family stockings passed down through generations hung above the fireplace, and colorful poinsettias decorated every corner of the room. From the kitchen wafted the savory aroma of honey-baked ham that had been prepared since the previous day. The green bean casserole was already waiting in the oven for the perfect degree of doneness. The table was set with an Irish linen tablecloth inherited from her grandmother, elegantly laid out with her mother's prized bone china. "Perfect," Jennifer whispered softly. For 28 years, she had pursued perfection for this day. But this year, something felt different. something was nagging at the back of her mind. Nat King Cole's The Christmas Song began playing quietly in the background. It was her father David's favorite song. "Jenny, this is wonderful." Her father, who had come down the stairs, was surprisingly well dressed. He was wearing a new Brooks Brothers suit and even had on an expensive watch he rarely used. Her mother Margaret had also applied her makeup more carefully than usual and changed into a gorgeous dress. "I wonder if Rebecca will be arriving soon." There was undisguised anticipation in her mother's voice. At that moment, they heard the sound of a luxury car engine, followed by a honk. "Oh, she must be here." Her mother hurried to the front door. Jennifer remained in the kitchen, making final preparations. From the living room came the sounds of her parents' excited voices welcoming her sister. "Welcome home, Rebecca. What a lovely car. Is it new?" "Yes, it's a celebration for last month's closing. It's a 2025 Range Rover model." There was a note of pride in Rebecca's voice. She entered the living room carrying an Hermès Birkin bag, her Louboutin heels clicking on the floor. "My, this tree, who decorated it?" "Jennifer did. She does it every year." "It's a bit old-fashioned, isn't it? These days, celebrities hire professional stylists." Rebecca sniffed dismissively while taking out her smartphone. "Oh yes. I must show everyone my achievements this year." She took out her tablet and began a flashy presentation. Luxurious property photos appeared one after another. Multi-million-dollar transactions, photos with celebrities, scenes from lavish parties. Their parents watched, spellbound. Sales up 200% from last year. Top sales in the company. Amazing. That's our daughter. Their parents' cheers echoed throughout the room. No one noticed Jennifer's presence as she quietly put the finishing touches on the meal in the kitchen. "Oh, that reminds me," Rebecca suddenly said, as if just remembering something. "I'm going on a 3-week Caribbean cruise next month. Taking time off from work." "How wonderful." Mother's eyes sparkled. "But are you sure about the money?" David asked worriedly. "Of course. I have plenty of savings." Jennifer involuntarily paused. The thought of her sister's debt that she had covered just last week crossed her mind. But no one mentioned that. "Now, it's time for presents," Mother announced excitedly. Everyone gathered around the tree. Jennifer, having finished bringing out the last dishes, quietly joined the circle. "First, for Rebecca." Mother pulled out a large envelope. Inside was a ticket for the top suite room on the luxury cruise ship Royal Caribbean. "You are our pride and joy." Mother embraced Rebecca with a beaming smile. "Now you can have a wonderful vacation." Rebecca squealed with delight and immediately began taking photos of the cruise ticket with her smartphone. "Next. Jennifer." Father's tone changed. He pulled out a large paper bag from behind him. "Here's your present." Inside the paper bag was a set of used cleaning supplies. A broom, dustpan, rags. And along with them, there was a name tag. It read Housekeeper. "This should be enough, right? I even included a housekeeper's name tag that suits you perfectly." Father let out a loud laugh. Her sister gave a mean-spirited snicker. "This suits you best," Mother said in a tone that suggested it was perfectly natural. The room's atmosphere froze. Jennifer stood up silently. She picked up the cleaning supplies and carefully arranged them on the table. "Thank you." Her voice was surprisingly calm. "I think I'll take a break." Jennifer went upstairs to her room. The family's laughter could still be heard from downstairs. She quietly opened her closet and took out a suitcase she had prepared in advance. The essential items were already packed. Passport, bankbook, certificates. Everything had been prepared for this day. Outside the window, it had started snowing again. Jennifer placed an envelope on her desk. It simply read, "Thank you for the 28 years." No one noticed when she left through the front door. Only the Christmas tree lights illuminated her back. Before getting into the taxi, she took one last look at the house, where her family's lively voices still echoed. She gave the driver her destination and sank deep into the seat. Jennifer closed her eyes. The taxi quietly drove away through the snowy streets. "This is your new home." Michael held out the keys to an old brick apartment building. Located in Boston's Back Bay district, it was a 5-story building in a quiet residential area. The historic, substantial exterior with its well-maintained small courtyard in a peaceful neighborhood was a fitting place for Jennifer to begin her new life. "Thank you." She quietly accepted the keys. The room was surprisingly bright, with large windows overlooking the old cityscape. The furniture was minimal, but that made it feel all the more comfortable. "Thank you for everything. You've done well this past week." Michael's voice was filled with warm consideration. Indeed, the past week had been long. Emergency department transfer procedures at work, changing bank accounts, preparing for a new life. Everything had to be done quickly but surely. "What about your family?" "They haven't noticed yet," Jennifer answered while gazing out the window. As she had expected, her family hadn't noticed her absence. Like every year, they were probably still enjoying family time centered around Rebecca for several days after Christmas. However, that peace didn't last long. The first sign was a notice that the home phone bill had passed its due date. The payment that Jennifer would normally have processed automatically had been left unpaid. Next, her father noticed. Where are my medications?" David Wilson was confused by the absence of his prescription medications that should have been arranged in their usual place. The medicine box, organized by week with designated times for taking each pill, had disappeared. In fact, Jennifer had been managing all of that. Margaret couldn't maintain her diabetic diet restrictions. It had been Jennifer who had considered the nutritional balance of every meal, calculated calories, and adjusted salt content. The magnitude of her presence became clearer day by day. "Jennifer? Where are you?" Mother's voice began to show anxiety for the first time. At weekend church services, her daughter wasn't there as usual. Neighbors began asking worriedly, "Haven't seen your elder daughter lately?" Indeed, the house doesn't look as well kept anymore. "Is your mother doing all right?" Rumors spread quietly but surely. Then, the decisive event occurred on the 10th day after Jennifer's departure. Mr. Wilson. Early in the morning, Mrs. Thomas from next door rushed in frantically. Your wife. Margaret Wilson had collapsed on the garden steps. She had tried to go alone to her regular checkup, which Jennifer would normally have accompanied her to, and had gotten dizzy. The ambulance siren echoed through the quiet residential area. Her blood pressure has reached dangerous levels. Her diabetes also seems to be out of control. The doctor at Newton Wellesley Hospital spoke sternly. Where are the family members? We tried contacting her sister, but couldn't reach her. David sighed deeply at the nurse's report. In fact, Rebecca had disappeared 3 days ago. She had cashed in her Caribbean cruise tickets and vanished. Meanwhile, at Jennifer's new workplace, they had noticed something unusual. Ms. Wilson, there's an inquiry about Ms. Rebecca Wilson from someone claiming to be from a real estate company. Jennifer closed her eyes for a moment. Please put them through. The voice on the other end was her sister's company supervisor. Actually, a serious problem has come to light. Rebecca Wilson's embezzlement of client deposits. The total amount was staggering. And much of it had disappeared into gambling. If you know your sister's whereabouts. But Jennifer didn't know either. That night, lying on her bed in her new apartment, Jennifer stared at her smartphone screen. Unread messages to her parents. Her sister's Instagram had suddenly been deleted. Are you okay? A message arrived from Michael. Yes, just thinking about some things. As she typed her reply, Jennifer looked out the window. It had started snowing again. Just then, her phone rang. Jennifer. Her mother's voice was trembling. Where are you? Please come back. There was a desperation in that voice she had never heard before. In the background, she could hear her father's distressed voice too. Please, come back home. Her mother was crying on the other end of the phone. Jennifer silently hung up. Then she sent another message to Michael. There are some things I'd like you to look into tomorrow. She realized it was finally time to know all the truth. The extent of her father's cognitive decline, her mother's real health condition, and the full scope of her sister's debts. The waiting room at Newton Wellesley Hospital was wrapped in early morning quietness. Jennifer was reviewing the investigation report she had received from Michael. It detailed the reality of her family's situation after she left. Ma'am, it's visiting time. Looking up at the nurse's voice, she saw her father David at the end of the corridor. Having spent every day caring for her bedridden mother, he was clearly exhausted. Jennifer? Her father's eyes widened. However, his expression showed neither the dignity nor arrogance of before. He was just a tired old man. Dad, please sit down. Jennifer quietly opened the report. I've confirmed everything here. The first page contained her father's diagnosis. Early-stage Alzheimer's dementia. The symptoms had apparently begun 2 years ago. Why did you keep quiet about this? I didn't want to worry you. Her father looked down. But that was just an excuse. In reality, he simply hadn't wanted to admit his dependence on his eldest daughter. The next pages contained her mother's medical records. Mom's condition was more serious than I thought. Progression of diabetic nephropathy, strain on her heart from hypertension, and a diagnosis of depression. Everything had rapidly deteriorated in the month since Jennifer's absence. We got a call from her primary physician. Her father's voice trembled. "Your mother needs serious care. Someone from the family needs to be with her constantly." That's what they were told. However, Rebecca was still missing. Her father alone could never manage her mother's care. What about the money? When Jennifer opened the next page, her father turned away. Bank statements, piles of unpaid bills, foreclosure notices. The family finances were completely in ruins. And the main cause was Rebecca. Her father managed to squeeze out the words. Her sister's problems were more serious than imagined. The total amount of embezzled client deposits exceeded $2 million. Most of it had disappeared into online casinos. The flashy lifestyle posted on social media had all been built on debt. Her father held out a trembling letter. Actually, this arrived yesterday. It was a confession letter from Rebecca. "Dear Dad, Mom, and Big Sister. I am the worst person. I've lost everything. I embezzled company money, lost everything to gambling, and lost my family's trust. But what was ugliest was my attitude toward you, Big Sister. Actually, I've always been jealous of you, who could excel at work, care for the family, be perfect. To fill my own emptiness, I put on airs and looked down on you. I'm now at a rehabilitation facility in Las Vegas. I plan to turn myself into the police, confessing all my crimes. This is the only atonement I can make. I'm truly sorry." After reading the letter, the hospital room was enveloped in deep silence. "Jennifer," her father called out in a hoarse voice. "We were so foolish." At that moment, her mother lying in bed slightly opened her eyes. "Oh. Jennifer? Am I dreaming?" "No, Mom. It's really me." Large tears fell from her mother's eyes. "I'm sorry for treating you so." Unspoken apologies filled the room. Just then, Jennifer's smartphone rang. It was a message from Michael. "The neighbors want to form a support group for your parents. Everyone is worried about them." Following that came an image of the home phone bill. It was marked as paid. The neighbors apparently split the cost among themselves. "They all understood how much you've been supporting your family all this time." Jennifer let out a deep sigh. The past 28 years flashed through her mind like a kaleidoscope. The days she had devoted to her family since childhood. Perhaps they hadn't been in vain after all. She quietly began. "Let's properly discuss what happens from now on." Outside the window, spring birds were flying about. The end of winter was definitely approaching. First, Dad's dementia treatment. Then considering a care facility for Mom. And she took a breath. How to balance this with my new life? Her father and mother nodded silently. Now it was their turn to listen. "However, there are conditions." Jennifer's voice was quiet but firm. "From now on, as equals. No more one-sided sacrifices from anyone." The morning sunlight streaming into the hospital room announced the beginning of a new day. That evening, while driving to her parents' house in Michael's car, Jennifer was thinking. There are no perfect solutions. But if they face each other honestly and take it one step at a time, surely they can find their way forward. When the car stopped in front of her old house, neighbors had gathered. Everyone welcomed her with warm smiles. "Welcome home, Jennifer." She nodded slightly at those words. "I'm home." 6 months later, Jennifer sat at her window in her old Back Bay apartment, sipping coffee while working on her laptop. The screen displayed a care schedule for her parents' home. "How's this look?" Michael peered over from beside her. Their relationship had gradually deepened over these 6 months. "Yes, I'll go to my parents' house on weekends, and during weekdays, the care workers and Mrs. Thomas next door will." Life was slowly finding its new rhythm. At her parents' house, her father David had started medication treatment for his dementia. Thanks to early detection, they had been able to significantly slow its progression. The weekly Tuesday memory clinic visits had become a regular part of their routine. "I have a chess appointment with Dad today." Their weekly chess games had become a new form of communication with her father. In these slow-paced moments, he had gradually begun to share his true feelings. "I pushed you too hard, didn't I? We're all trying to change." Her mother Margaret was working hard at rehabilitation in a specialized care facility. While her diabetes and high blood pressure weren't completely recovered, her doctor had given firm approval of her steady improvement. "Jennifer, look." Last week, her mother had started knitting again after a long time. She proudly showed Jennifer the gloves she had made, clumsy but full of effort. "I thought they would suit you." Her words carried a gentleness that hadn't been there before. And Rebecca. Letters from her sister still arrived regularly. "Dear Big Sister, I'm slowly getting used to life at the Las Vegas rehabilitation facility. Treatment for gambling addiction isn't easy, but I'm gradually moving forward with others in similar situations. Regarding the company money, we reached a settlement agreement for full repayment. I'll be paying it back over the next 10 years. I've started working part-time at a local supermarket now. A $15 per hour job. But this seems to suit me better." The other day, the facility counselor told me something: "True happiness begins with living honestly with yourself." Those words really resonate with me now. "I'm so sorry about what I did to you and our parents. Please let me apologize in person someday." While rereading the letter, Jennifer reflected. Her sister's path to rehabilitation had only just begun. But at least she was starting to face her true self. The neighborhood relationships had also settled into a new pattern. Neighbors who looked after her parents' care. Mrs. Thomas, who sometimes brought over dinner. The warm greetings at Sunday church. "The power of community is amazing," Michael said the other day. "Indeed, you don't have to shoulder everything alone. There are always people willing to help." That might be the biggest lesson learned over these past 6 months. At work, new challenges had begun as well. "Ms. Wilson, we'd like you to lead a new project," her boss had approached her last week. She no longer needed to work just to meet someone else's expectations. She could choose her own path based on her own will. She was savoring that joy now. "Jennifer?" As she was lost in thought, Michael called out to her. "Next Sunday, for lunch at your parents' house, may I join?" His request surprised her a little. But it was a pleasant surprise. Yes, of course. The weekend lunches were becoming a new family tradition. Her father's jokes, her mother's cooking, the neighbors' contributions. Small but genuine happiness could be found there. Perfect families don't exist anywhere. But understanding each other, accepting each other, and supporting each other, that process might be what makes a real family. Outside the window, the summer sunlight gently illuminated the street trees' green leaves. Well, shall we go? Jennifer stood up. Today was chess day with her father. Even though she knew he would lose, he looked forward to it every week. Sometimes he would make the same move multiple times due to his medication, but that too was part of their precious time together. As she picked up her bag, she smiled. The spring storm had passed, and a peaceful summer had arrived. In this new season, her life was definitely moving forward. Let's go, Michael. The two of them walked out into the summer streets. Surely various trials still lay ahead. But she wasn't alone anymore. That certainty warmly embraced her heart.